All right.
It sounds like they're
Good
coming.
job.
Thanks, Josh.
Well, hello. I am Devon Dix Shepherd. I was born in Cedar City, Utah, December 21st, 1912. I was a Christmas present to my older sister, Mary. Oh, they loved, and my older brother, Leslie and Ross. They loved me and adored me. They spoiled me rotten, and they took care of me. We lived in just a 2-bedroom home. The girls slept on cots in one room, the parents in the other, so the boys had to sleep on cots in the kitchen. We had a wash basin by the kitchen door. As you came in from playing, you had to wash up. Now, Saturday night, that kitchen became the bathroom, and that's where you had to take your bath once a week. Now, the toilet was out back. Pretty cold in the winter to have to go out back in the middle of the night, but that's how it was. We were very poor. We didn't have much. We had 2 ranches. Dad would leave in the spring to go shear sheep. Papa would go, and he'd be gone months at a time, so Mama just had to take care of us. Now, we would go, a farmhand who lived with us named Shorty. The milk ranch had all the cattle and horses, and so they were called opposite, just kind of funny, but that's what they were. They were 15 miles apart, and they were on a pretty rough road. So once we got to the riding ranch every summer, that's where we stayed, and that's where we spent our summers. Mama would pack everything on a big wagon, and then off we'd go. Now, my parents were Hazel and Bill Dix, and Hazel was from, Bill was from Wales, but Hazel, her family had already been in Cedar City, and that's where they met. Let's see. In 1920, we moved to Sutherland, and it had been 7.5 years. I was 7.5 years old when my brother Max was born. So I began to take care of Max and help with him. And a few years later, my younger brother Ralph was born. Now they were feisty, and they got into things. And Ralph was known to run. And he would run away, and he would go over a bridge and then into the street. And it was dangerous. And I was responsible for him, and I couldn't let him get hurt. So one time he went too far, too many times. He went over that bridge, and I brought him back, and I dumped him in that irrigation ditch. And he was howling so loud when he came out that the neighbors had to come out to see what was wrong. But he didn't run away again. So, you don't mess with me. In 1921, I was baptized in August. I was sat on a bench with the other children to be baptized. My parents were not there, and they forgot me. At the very end, when I was still sitting there alone, my bishop walked over to the man who was baptizing the children for the month, and he told them my name, and then they did call my name, and I got to be baptized. But my parents weren't there. It's just not how things were done then. In 3rd to 5th grade, was able to go ahead in spelling and math, and I loved doing that. I saw my first airplane because the pilot landed in a field and gave all of us a little treat in 1924. In 1925, my papa went out to shear sheep, but he cut himself, and he was injured and got blood poisoning, and actually was down for about 3 months, very, very sick, almost died. Now, as soon as he came back and went back to work, he had a horrible pain in his right side and had acute appendicitis and ended up in the Provo hospital. So by then, I do believe it was his cousin convinced us to move to Provo, which ended up being a wonderful thing because Mama took on boarders, college boarders, and that is how I met my husband, George. Now, just to earn a little extra money, I would pick cherries and strawberries when I was about your ages. And we didn't get a new Easter dress. We didn't get a new Christmas dress. We earned money all year for a 4th of July dress, a big parade, a big celebration, and that was when we got to buy the fabric and Mama would make us our new dress. So we lived in 1925, we moved to Pleasant View, and that was just north of Provo, where Helaman Halls is now. That was the first time that we had indoor plumbing and a wood stove. Now, in 6th grade, I visited my grandparents in Cedar City. We took the trip down there, and that's the last time I saw them alive because they died about 3 years later. I had long auburn hair, and people would stop and look at me and watch me, and they would say how beautiful it was. They would tell me. I made friends easily, but was kind of timid. I didn't put myself out there, but I had a lot of friends. I was rarely sick. I do not remember visiting a doctor when I was a child at all. My mama had her babies at home and was a hard worker and had the energy of 3 women. She was amazing. Let's see here. When Mama took on these boarders, the first time I saw George, he was sitting at the table, and I just thought to myself, oh, who is that guy in that ugly red sweater? And I was not impressed. But he wasn't real impressed with me either. I came in with my friends, and we were just the giggling girls who came into the couch. So luckily, he stuck it out, and we got to know each other better, and he wanted to marry me. Now, I made him wait about 2 years. I didn't get married until I was 25 because I had never had money, and I wanted to have money. I wanted to finish school, and I wanted to have a little money saved and be able to work because I wanted to have the things that I did not have growing up. Now, so he was in Washington, and I was in Utah still at school and working. Valentine's Day, though, he mailed me a ring, and it came on Valentine's Day, and my sister slipped it on my finger, and we were officially engaged. Now, we did get married August 18th, 1937. Yes, I said I was 25, but there was no money. There was no reception. We didn't invite a lot of people to come help us celebrate. There were a few people there, our closest friends and family, in the Salt Lake Temple. But our honeymoon was at the Temple Square Hotel for a few days and then back to work. On the way to our wedding, my fiance George had bought a new Ford, a 60. And it was a fancy new car. But he fell asleep and he rolled it and totaled the car and had to come to our wedding by bus. And he was so afraid of what to tell me and what I'd say. But he remembers that I just had a quiet assurance, and I was very patient, and I said, everything will be okay. It will be okay. Because you're okay. That's all that matters. We moved into Washington. We didn't have money for our wedding pictures, and so there are no pictures the day. We did get dressed up when we were in Washington and took a few with a friend's camera. But even those are pretty blurry, and I think only one exists of me in my wedding dress. I did work at Woodward and Northrop's, and I started selling underwear there, and then eventually china and crystal and things. But I barely made enough to just kind of buy the things I wanted there. Not much to supplement our actual income, but it gave me something to do, so I wasn't alone. Learning to drive was awful. I flunked the driver's test the first time, and I still had trouble, even after I finally... The policeman was very nice, though. He just said, maybe you should come back another day. And I had to learn to drive this Chevy stick shift, and I hated it. And even after I learned, I avoided stoplights whenever I could. 2 weeks after we got a new car, we went on vacation with Mary and Chess, my older sister Mary and her husband Chess, and we loved them. We did a lot of things with them, visited them many over the years. And Mary and I were talking. The boys were in the car in the front, and we were in the back. And I crashed the car because I got drowsy. And I ran over the ditch. I ran across traffic and landed us in a ditch and kind of ruined the tire and some things on the car. We went to Knoxville for 3 months while he was in the FBI doing a general investigative experience. They wanted him to gain that experience as well as he was a CPA. We lived in Louisville, Kentucky for a while, and while there, had a lot of good friends, and we went to the Kentucky Derby. Well, 3 days before the Derby, George was called back to Washington on assignment. And so I went without him, and I had a great time. None of the horses that I picked won, but I had a great time and went with our friends. Our children began to come. 1943, I was 12 days in the hospital with Linda. They gave me gas, and I don't remember much of it at all. Bill was in May 45, and he was named after my dad and grandpa, William Dix. I was 9 days in the hospital for him. Then Brian was born December 2nd, 1948. He was due November 15th. He came 2 weeks late. My mama had already gone home and wasn't there for him to be born because she had to take care of Thanksgiving at home. Then finally, little Susan, in 1951, our family moved. And I would have Brian home before Susan was born. My baby at home, we'd go play, we'd go do things, and on the way home I'd always say, "Home, James, don't spare the horses." And he'd always say, "Why do you say that?" Maybe it's back to my horse days at the Derby. I loved horses and grew up riding them. Susan was born in 54, and I was only 4 days in Mesa Southside Hospital. We lived in Mesa by then, and my husband was a bishop for many years. We got to travel the world together after our children left. We traveled to Mexico, the World's Fair in Canada. We worked at the Mesa Temple. We went on a mission to the Washington Temple. We were mission there, and while on our mission, we came up with a very powerful new presentation that was a great missionary tool. We also traveled to Hawaii, the Mediterranean, Egypt, Jerusalem, Garden Tomb, Dead Sea, Galilee, Alaska, Europe, Vienna. We got to see the wall between East and West Germany. We loved our trips to California, many trips to see family in Utah and California. Pine Top Trailer, we eventually bought. We were married over 50 years. We moved to Mesa in 1988 and said goodbye to our home of Tempe. Almost 40 years that we lived in that Tempe home. And in 1989, we did a big family reunion to Disneyland. We had a car accident on our way home, George and I there. But we did recover from that, but I always had residual pain and eventually just didn't feel good and got checked out, and I did have a tumor in my liver. And that was in 1990 that they found that. Had some treatment, stayed home, but the cancer spread. I did get to attend Wes and Nicole's wedding in the special place of the temple, the Mesa Temple, where I served for so long. At the end, it was very difficult to talk, and I had a wall of pictures of my grandchildren. And George said that I'd often look up and say, "Oh, that precious child." I passed away November 4th, 1992. Nicole, Julie, and Adrian sang "As I Have Loved You" at my funeral. The family took care of the funeral. Those that I loved here in life, and I know someday we'll be together again.